April 16, 1945, 0300 hours. The Oder River front, east of Berlin. Fog clings to the muddy banks like a shroud, and the air hums with the distant growl of engines, thousands of them hidden in the pre-dawn gloom. General Gotthard Heinrici, commander of Army Group Vistula, hunches over a battered map in his dimly lit command bunker, the flicker of a kerosene lamp casting long shadows across his gaunt face. His aides whisper urgently, their breaths visible in the chill. Outside, Wehrmacht soldiers huddle in foxholes, fingers numb on their Mauser rifles, ears straining for the first crack of artillery. The Red Army is coming. You can feel it in the earth, a tremor building like the pulse of a beast awakening. Heinrici rubs his eyes, the weight of command pressing down harder than the concrete ceiling above. At 57, he's no stranger to the Eastern Front's brutality. He's the defensive genius who stalled the Soviets at the gates of Moscow years ago. But this feels different. Intelligence reports flood in, Stalin's forces under Marshals Zhukov and Konev massing over 1 million men, thousands of tanks, artillery pieces that could level mountains. Heinrici dismisses the wilder estimates with a grunt. Propaganda, surely. Yet doubt creeps in. His own lines are threadbare. Boys from the Hitler Youth, old men from the Volkssturm, patched together divisions scraped from the Reich's crumbling edges. Panzers? A handful of Tigers and Panthers, their treads worn, fuel tanks echoing empty. The first shell screams overhead at 0400, shattering the silence. It's not a barrage, it's Armageddon. Soviet Katyusha rockets howl like banshees, earth erupting in geysers of flame and dirt. Heinrici's bunker shakes, dust sifting from the beams. "Hold the line," he barks into the field telephone, his voice steady but his mind racing. The Oder's bridges are rigged to blow, but the Reds are probing, feinting, their infantry swarming across in rubber boats under cover of smoke. Machine guns chatter, tracers arc through the mist. A young lieutenant bursts in, face smeared with mud. "Herr General, they're crossing in force, tanks spotted fording the shallows." Heinrici peers through a periscope slit, heart pounding. There, silhouetted against the rising sun, shapes emerge from the haze. Not the lumbering hulks he expects, but sleek, angled beasts. T-34 85s, their 85mm guns swiveling like predators' heads. They surge forward at speeds that defy the muck, sloped armor shrugging off hasty Panzer Faust shots. One German anti-tank crew fires desperately, the round glancing harmlessly off the turret. The T-34 doesn't slow, it accelerates, treads churning, crushing barbed wire and foxholes alike. Heinrici watches, a chill unrelated to the cold seeping into his bones. How are they moving so fast? These aren't the crude machines from 41, the ones his panzers once outmaneuvered in the snows of Russia. No, these T-34 85s are refined killers, up-gunned, up-armored, produced in numbers that boggle the mind. Factories in Chelyabinsk and Sverdlovsk, safe beyond the Urals, churn them out like toys. Over 35,000 by war's end, each one a testament to Soviet endurance. Heinrici knows the specs from captured manuals: Christie suspension for blistering cross-country speed, diesel engines that sip fuel where German guzzlers thirst. But seeing them now, slicing through his defenses like knives through butter, it's disbelief incarnate. Explosions rock the front as more T-34s break through, their coaxial machine guns spitting death. A Panther crew radios in panic. "They're too quick, flanking us." Heinrici slams the periscope shut, barking orders for counterattacks that he knows are futile. The Seelow heights loom ahead, his last natural barrier before Berlin. If they fall. But the thought trails off as another wave hits. The Reds aren't charging blindly, they're coordinated, radio nets crackling with commands, infantry riding the tanks' backs like avenging spirits. You can almost hear the clank of tracks over the roar, smell the diesel exhaust mixing with cordite. Heinrici's face hardens. He's ordered withdrawals before, but Hitler forbids it now, ranting from his Führerbunker about miracle weapons and unyielding will. The general glances at his staff, their eyes wide with the same unspoken fear. The Oder is breaching. the floodgates opening, and these T-34s, they're the vanguard of doom. But as the sun climbs, revealing the full horror of the assault, Heinrici spots something in the chaos, a pattern perhaps, or is it just desperation? The battle for Berlin has begun, and the speed of those Soviet tanks is rewriting the rules. What happens when an unbreakable defense meets an unstoppable force?
April 17th, 1945. Dawn breaks cold and gray over the Seelow heights. The plateau, once a quiet agricultural ridge rising gently above the flooded Oder swamp, now trembles under the weight of endless steel. General Heinrici stands in his forward command post, a reinforced farmhouse bunker west of the heights, the air thick with the acrid tang of gunpowder and burning oil. His eyes, red-rimmed from sleepless nights, fix on the horizon where plumes of black smoke rise like funeral pyres. The Soviet barrage from yesterday still echoes in his ears. Over 500,000 shells in 30 minutes, the largest ever unleashed. Yet his men held, barely. Heinrici had pulled his frontline troops back from the riverbank before the storm hit, a calculated gamble that saved lives but couldn't stop the tide. Now reports flood in from the Ninth Army under General Theodor Busse. The second defensive line, the Steinstellung, is buckling. Soviet infantry, waves of them, surge forward under cover of smoke screens, their greatcoats flapping like dark wings. But it's the armor that chills Heinrici most. T-34 85s, upgraded, deadly, roar up the muddy slopes at speeds his own Panthers can barely match on good roads. Their wide tracks bite into the churned earth, Christie suspensions soaking up the jolts, diesel engines growling without pause. One after another they crest the ridge, 85mm guns barking, coaxial machine guns hosing down trenches. A radio operator relays a frantic call from the 20th Panzer Grenadier Division. Enemy tanks penetrating at Neu-Hardenberg, dozens moving too fast to intercept. Heinrici clenches his jaw. He knows the numbers. His Army Group Vistula fields perhaps 500 operational tanks across the entire front, many Tigers and Panthers starved of fuel. The Soviets? Thousands. The Second Guards Tank Army alone pushes forward with columns that stretch for miles. T-34s leading the charge, infantry clinging to their hulls, firing from the march. You can picture it. A T-34 bursts through a hedgerow, sloped frontal armor deflecting a desperate PaK-40 round that ricochets skyward. The tank commander, hatch open, shouts orders in Russian as the turret swings, slamming a shell into a German Stug 3 that erupts in flames. Behind it, more follow, relentless, mechanical. They don't stop to consolidate, they exploit, flanking positions before the defenders can react. Heinrici's carefully prepared anti-tank ditches fill with burning wrecks, but enough T-34s bypass them, using the very chaos to gain ground. By midday, the Heights' northern flank gives way. Soviet 3rd and 5th Shock Armies, backed by the 2nd Guards Tank Army, pour through breaches near Riesen. Large formations of T-34s rumble unopposed behind German lines, fanning out, cutting supply roads. Heinrici shifts reserves, precious SS units like the Nordland Division, but they arrive piecemeal, too late. A Panther battalion from the Müncheberg Panzer Regiment knocks out several dozen advancing T-34s in a brief, furious duel south of Hermannsdorf, their 75mm KWK-42 guns punching through Soviet side armor. Yet for every one destroyed, 3 more appear. The general paces the bunker, maps strewn across the table. His staff watches in silence as he traces the red arrows creeping westward. The speed, it's unnatural. These T-34s, born in factories relocated beyond the Urals, churned out in the tens of thousands despite every bombing raid, every evacuation. Their simple design, rugged, forgiving, lets barely trained crews drive them hard across impossible terrain. No fancy electronics, no complex hydraulics to fail in the mud, just raw, brutal mobility. Heinrici mutters to his chief of staff. They move like the devil himself is driving. The words hang heavy. He had faced T-34s before, back in 41 and 42, when German Panzers still held the edge in quality. Now the edge is gone. Quantity has become quality. The realization settles like lead in his stomach. The defensive genius who once stalled the Red Army at Moscow can delay no longer. The heights will fall, and when they do, Berlin lies only 60 kilometers away. As evening falls, the Soviets reach the final German line, the Wotanstellung. Artillery duels light the sky orange. Heinrici knows tomorrow will bring the end here. But in the south, Konev's first Ukrainian front is already racing forward, bypassing the heights entirely. The trap is closing. How much time remains before the T-34s reach the city streets?
April 20th, 1945. Mid-morning. The outskirts of Berlin. The once proud capital lies under a pall of smoke so thick it turns day into perpetual twilight. General Heinrici, now displaced from the Seelow heights, has relocated his crumbling headquarters to a commandeered schoolhouse in the suburb of Bernau, barely 10 kilometers from the city limits. The walls shake with the steady drumbeat of Soviet artillery, 152mm howitzers and Katyushas pounding what remains of the German outer defenses. Through cracked windows, he can see the glow of fires on the horizon. The T-34s have arrived. They come not in neat columns, but as swarms, hundreds of them, engines roaring, tracks grinding over shattered cobblestones and garden walls. The first Belarusian front under Zhukov has broken through the last ring north of the city. Konev's southern pincer races in from the other side, closing the noose. Heinrichi's staff officers cluster around a flickering radio set, voices overlapping in frantic German and broken static. T-34 sighted on the Landsberger Chaussee, moving at full speed toward Tempelhof. They've overrun the 9th Parachute Division, infantry riding the hulls. Panzerfaust's ineffective at range. They're too fast. Heinrici steps outside into the courtyard, coat collar turned up against the ash drifting like snow. The air reeks of cordite, diesel, and burning wood. In the distance, he hears it, the unmistakable metallic clatter of T-34 tracks echoing off ruined buildings, growing louder with every passing minute. Then he sees them. A platoon of T-34-85s rounding the corner of a bombed-out apartment block, turrets traversing, guns elevated. Their sloped hulls gleam dully under the smoke haze, red stars stark against olive drab. One tank commander stands in the open hatch, binoculars raised, scanning for targets with calm professionalism. No hesitation, no fear, just momentum. You can almost feel the ground vibrate as they accelerate down the wide avenue, weaving around craters and abandoned tramcars. A lone German 88mm flak gun opens fire from a side street, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, now manned by teenagers and wounded veterans. The shell strikes the lead T-34 square on the glasses. Sparks fly. The round ricochets high, screaming into the sky. The tank doesn't even slow. Its 85mm main gun swings, belches flame. The 88mm position vanishes in a fireball, crew gone in an instant. Heinrici watches, motionless, as more T-34s pour past, some scarred with weld lines from hasty repairs, others fresh from the railhead, paint still factory bright. They move with terrifying purpose. One peels off to smash through a barricade of overturned trucks and concrete blocks. Another pauses only long enough to let riflemen dismount before surging forward again. Their speed in the city is astonishing, 30-40 kilometers an hour on broken streets where German heavy tanks would bog down or stall. The Christie suspension absorbs every jolt. The wide tracks distribute weight over rubble and debris. These machines were born for this kind of war. Inside the schoolhouse, an aide approaches, voice low. Herr General, the Führer has ordered every man to fight to the last, no retreat. Heinrichi's expression doesn't change, but something hardens behind his eyes. He knows what this means, street by street slaughter, boys and old men thrown against these steel monsters with nothing but rifles and desperation. He has seen the T-34s in open country. Now he sees them in the urban maze, using alleys for cover, using speed to flank, using sheer numbers to overwhelm. A sudden explosion rocks the building. Dust cascades from the ceiling. Outside, a T-34 has just demolished a corner house 2 blocks away, its turret already swinging toward the next target. Heinrici turns to his operations officer. "We cannot hold the perimeter. Pull back to the inner defense ring, the Tiergarten, the Reichstag sector. Buy time." The order is given, but both men know it's only postponement. The Red Army's revenge has arrived on tracks of steel. The T-34s that once stunned the world in 1941 have matured into the hammer that will smash the heart of the Reich. And as the first Soviet tanks rumble into the residential streets of Berlin proper, their engines echoing between the gutted facades, one terrible truth settles over Heinrici as the smoke itself. The war is no longer about holding ground. It is about how many minutes remain before the city falls completely. Yet even now, amid the chaos, isolated German units still fight. Snipers in upper floors, Hitler Youth with Panzerfausts in cellars. They will exact a price, but the price will be paid in blood, not in victory. How long can the last illusions of resistance survive against such relentless steel?
April 23, 1945. Late afternoon. The Reichstag sector, central Berlin. The once grand government quarter is now a labyrinth of fire-blackened stone and twisted rebar. General Heinrici has moved again, this time to a makeshift command post in the cellars beneath the ruined Olympic Stadium complex, far enough west to delay the inevitable, but close enough to hear the approaching thunder. The air underground is stale, heavy with the smell of damp concrete, sweat, and fear. A single bulb swings from the ceiling, throwing jagged shadows across the faces of his remaining staff. Maps pinned to the wall are covered in fresh red crayon arrows, all pointing inward, converging on one red circle, the Führerbunker. Above ground, the battle has become something primal. Soviet T-34s prowl the wide boulevards like wolves in a ruined forest. They move in small, deadly packs, 4 or 5 at a time, using the cover of gutted buildings to mask their approach, then bursting into open squares with engines screaming. Their speed through the wreckage is almost supernatural. Where a king tiger would have bogged down in the rubble or become an easy target for hidden Panzerfausts, the T-34 slips through gaps, climbs over debris piles, and accelerates again before the defenders can reload. A Hitler Youth squad, barely 16 years old, crouches behind a toppled marble statue on Unter den Linden. They clutch single-shot Panzerfausts, fingers trembling on the triggers. One boy whispers a prayer as the first T-34 rounds the corner 200 meters away. The tank commander's hatch is open. He's standing upright, calmly directing his driver with hand signals. The boy fires. The rocket streaks out, trailing smoke, and slams into the T-34's frontal armor at a shallow angle. A bright flash, then nothing. The round bounces harmlessly into the street. The tank doesn't even pause. Its turret rotates with mechanical precision. A single 85mm high-explosive shell detonates among the boys. When the dust settles, the statue is gone. So are the boys. Heinrici receives the report over a crackling field telephone. His voice is flat, almost mechanical. Pull back to the next block. Conserve ammunition. But there is no next block that matters anymore. The inner defense ring is collapsing street by street. Soviet infantry now ride the T-34s openly, rifles slung, shouting in triumph as they pass burning German half-tracks and overturned supply wagons. The tank's sloped armor shrugs off most small arms fire. Their wide tracks crush barricades of furniture and tram cars as if they were paper. In the southern districts, Konev's 3rd Guards Tank Army has already reached the Landwehr Canal. T-34s ford the shallow water, turrets elevated, spraying machine gun fire at snipers in the upper floors of shattered ministries. Their mobility turns the urban battlefield into their domain. They don't need to stop and fight head-on. They flank, they bypass, they appear where least expected. German counterattacks, desperate sallies by the remaining fragments of the Müncheberg and Hermann Göring divisions meet the same fate every time. A brief blaze of 88mm fire, a handful of T-34s knocked out, then the rest surge past, leaving burning wrecks behind. Heinrici receives the report over a crackling field telephone. His voice is flat, almost mechanical. Pull back to the next block. Conserve ammunition. But there is no next block that matters anymore. The inner defense ring is collapsing street by street. Soviet infantry now ride the T-34s openly, rifles slung, shouting in triumph as they pass burning German half-tracks and overturned supply wagons. The tank's sloped armor shrugs off most small arms fire. Their wide tracks crush barricades of furniture and tram cars as if they were paper. In the southern districts, Konev's 3rd Guards Tank Army has already reached the Landwehr Canal. T-34s forward the shallow water, turrets elevated, spraying machine gun fire at snipers in the upper floors of shattered ministries. Their mobility turns the urban battlefield into their domain. They don't need to stop and fight head-on. They flank, they bypass, they appear where least expected. German counterattacks, desperate sallies by the remaining fragments of the Müncheberg and Hermann Göring divisions meet the same fate every time. A brief blaze of 88mm fire, a handful of T-34s knocked out, then the rest surge past, leaving burning wrecks behind. Heinrici stands in the dim cellar, staring at the map. The red circle around the government quarter has shrunk to a few city blocks. He knows the Führer is still below, issuing orders for phantom armies, demanding counteroffensives that exist only on paper. The general's own orders from OKH grow frantic, more delusional. Yet the truth is written in the sounds drifting down the ventilation shafts, the relentless clatter of T-34 tracks, the sharp crack of 85mm guns, and the rising chorus of Russian battle cries. For the first time since the war began, Heinrici allows himself to speak the words aloud, quietly, to no one in particular. We never imagined they could come this far, this fast. The sentence hangs in the damp air. His chief of staff looks up, eyes hollow. No one replies. There is nothing left to say. Outside, night falls early under the pall of smoke. Searchlights stab through the darkness, catching the angular silhouettes of T-34s as they roll past the Brandenburg Gate. The tank's engines roar in triumph. Their diesel growl has become the heartbeat of a dying city. The final act is beginning. The Reichstag, the Reich Chancellery, the Führerbunker itself, all now within range of Soviet guns. And still the T-34s keep coming, unstoppable, inexhaustible. How does a man who once believed in the superiority of German arms face the moment when every belief is crushed beneath steel tracks?
April 25, 1945, early evening. The Reich Chancellery Garden, what remains of it. The once manicured lawns are now a cratered moonscape, littered with the blackened husks of overturned staff cars and the twisted remains of a few late-war Panthers that never got the chance to fire a shot. General Gotthard Heinrici has come as close as he dares to the epicenter of the collapsing Reich, his final command post now reduced to a shallow trench behind the ruined facade of the new Reich Chancellery. The sky above is the color of old blood, lit by the constant flicker of explosions and the glow of a city consuming itself. He stands motionless, greatcoat flapping in the hot wind of nearby fires, watching as a column of T-34-85s grinds past the Brandenburg Gate less than a kilometer away. Their diesel engines snarl in low gear, tracks chewing through the marble steps of the ruined victory column as if it were soft earth. Soviet tank riders, guardsmen in padded helmets and greatcoats, lean out from the rear decks, waving red banners and shouting in hoarse triumph. The tanks do not charge blindly. They move with practiced caution now, using the cover of gutted buildings, pausing only to swing turrets and blast any window that might conceal a sniper or a desperate Panzerfaust team. One T-34 halts in the middle of the Pariser plots. The commander ducks down into the turret, then reappears, pointing.
The 85mm gun elevates, traverses slightly, and fires. A sharp crack. The shell punches through the upper floor of the old French embassy. A moment later, a secondary explosion, ammunition cooking off, lights the interior orange. The tank commander raises a fist in salute before the entire column resumes its advance, disappearing around the corner toward Wilhelmstrasse and the government quarter itself. Heinrici lowers his field glasses. His hands are steady, but his face is the color of ash. He has watched armies break before, his own included, but never like this. Never with such mechanical inevitability. The T-34s that once seemed a crude surprise in the summer of 1941 have become the perfect instrument of retribution. Their numbers alone are overwhelming. Over 2,000 tanks committed to the Berlin operation, many of them the final T-34-85 variant, upgunned and refined through 4 years of unrelenting war. Every factory east of the Urals had poured steel into these machines, simple, rugged, forgiving. A crew could lose half its members and still keep the tank fighting. German machines, by contrast, demanded skilled mechanics, precise fuel, and constant maintenance they no longer had. A runner stumbles into the trench, uniform torn, face blackened. Herr General, the Führerbunker is under direct fire. The last SS units are holding the Vossstrasse entrance, but the Reds are bringing up IS-2 heavies. The T-34s are already inside the Chancellery courtyard. Heinrici nods once, the movement almost imperceptible. He knows what comes next. The final perimeter has shrunk to a handful of blocks. The garden, the bunker, a few cellars. That is all that remains of the 1,000-year Reich. He turns to the handful of officers still with him, exhausted, hollow-eyed men who once commanded divisions. "There will be no miracle," he says quietly. "No counterstroke, no relief column. The war ends here." The words are not defeatist, they are simply true. For 4 years he had fought with discipline, with ingenuity, buying days, then hours, then minutes. Now even the minutes are running out. A sudden roar splits the air. 3 T-34s burst through the ornamental gate into the Chancellery garden, turrets already swinging toward the bunker complex. Their machine guns rake the ruins, stitching lines of tracer across the shattered walls. One tank fires its main gun point-blank into the entrance portico. Stone explodes outward in a cloud of dust and fire. The sound is deafening, final. Heinrici watches the scene unfold with the calm of a man who has already accepted the verdict. The unstoppable tide from the east has arrived. The machines that once shocked the world with their appearance have now finished the job they began. From the snowfields outside Moscow to the rubble of Berlin, the T-34 has carried the weight of an entire people's vengeance, and it has not faltered. As the first Soviet infantry dismount and rush toward the bunker steps under covering fire from the tanks, Heinrici speaks one last time, almost to himself. "They came faster than we ever believed possible." The words are swallowed by the roar of engines and the crack of rifles. The last illusions are gone. The city is falling, and with it, the war.